Well, hello. Here we are together once again. I am reporting to you live from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I am down here for a wedding, and I have been thinking about how I wanted to talk about this topic. And this kind of gave me the perfect opportunity to do so because, well, it was coming up for me all the time. So today we are talking about a specific form of social anxiety that, in my opinion, does not get quite enough attention. It's not the fear of people, it's not the fear of, I don't know, being. Um, Awkward or not knowing what to say. It's the fear of being misread, the fear of being seen as intense, or as harsh or cold or unkind when you are simply kind of just being yourself. So if you have ever softened your tone or your overall presence to avoid being labeled as a difficult person, this is an episode for you. Now, I don't know about you, but I can bring myself back to the moment that that type of social anxiety really started for me. As a kid, it was what it was. I think that I've always been viewed as an extrovert, but I would maybe put myself more in the extroverted introvert category. I really love and I'm good at being an extrovert, but I need alone time. I need to be alone completely off in order to recharge. And once I'm done with the social aspect of everything, I am done. And the other thing is that I'm so I don't know. I want to be liked. I care about being somebody who is liked. And I don't know if that is a a symptom of culture. I don't know if that is a symptom of my family or the way that I was raised, but it's something that I care about. And I know that there was one specific moment where, to me, it felt like my worst fear had come to fruition, and that was in college. I my freshman year, I had a teacher who was well, she was just really intense, and I this is again me speaking from my own personal experience. I don't think she particularly liked me, and that was very hard for me. She didn't like me, and in my perception, if someone else did the thing that I did, or if I did the same thing someone else did, she would come down way harder on me than she did on somebody else. And again, I don't totally know if that is 100% the truth, but that is the way that it felt to me. And if you don't know about theater school and what it means to go to a top 10 college where you are studying theater, we had what was called a cut program. So you got into the system, you got into the program, you had to audition extensively to get in. I was one of, I think by the time we all graduated, there were like 12 of us or something like that in my class, in my musical theater class. But when you start, you know that you're going to be going through cuts. And twice a year, freshman year and sophomore year, you have to go through different scenes, songs throughout classes. Everything that you're doing within the program is being watched and monitored and graded. And between any point of those that freshman to end of your sophomore year, you can be cut. So there were people who at the end of their sophomore year, they had already paid 2 years of college, gone to school, done the whole thing. They were cut from our musical theater program, and they had the option of continuing as a different major or of leaving altogether. And that is very scary and very hard. And so there was a lot of pressure for me. And I remember freshman year, one of the bits of feedback we had, what was called, they would write you letters and they would give you feedback basically as people, not just as an artist, but there were definitely there were character discussions in there as well, which, whether or not our teachers are equipped to give us that type of feedback, I think there's an argument to be made for and against. But anyways, I digress. Something that this teacher said to me, and mind you, I was terrified. I was so desperate for her to like me and to give me a positive bit of feedback. Uh, but in my review with her, she told me that I come across as cold. And I remember when she said it to me, um, my stomach dropped out of my butt. Like, it was to be viewed as someone who is so desperate to be liked, and did everything in my power to be kind and giving and almost over the top people pleasing. But most likely, there were moments with her where, because I was truly so scared and I was intimidated, that perhaps I was shy or whatever. But at 18, she told me that I come across as cold. And I will tell you, that has stuck with me for my entire life. And I think about it every single time I go to an interaction. I have an interaction with someone who I don't know. I think to myself, am I coming across as cold or condescending? It's like my it's my Roman Empire, if you will. And I have replayed this moment over and over and over since I was a child, since I was a kid, since I was a teenager. And I guess that anxiety of that, again, that was just her perception. That is like one person's comment throughout the course of my life, and there are other things that people have said over the years, but usually it's along the lines of, you're intimidating, not that you come across as cold or unkind. So this was one person's reality or one person's perception, but it was not necessarily the reality. So what I learned is that the the anxiety about this was not about, um I don't know, like, me understanding why exactly I came across that way. It was about how this person interpreted me, and then how I continued to riff off of how I imagined she interpreted me. This flavor of social anxiety, I think, is kind of a cousin of classic social anxiety. Classic social anxiety is the fear of embarrassment or of being judged, but what I'm talking about is this anxiety that comes from trying to manage other people's interpretations of you. Yes, trying to manage other people's interpretation. And this also falls along the same line as people pleasing. It's a form of trying to desperately control the way that someone else thinks or feels towards you. Studies show that self-monitoring like this, people who are constantly tracking how they are being perceived, they experience a higher cognitive load. They experience more cognitive load, they experience more anxiety, and they have reduced social comfort, which I would probably put myself in that category. And this is sometimes called self monitoring overload in cognitive behavioral models. So this is why you can be confident and still feel socially anxious. It's like you know that you're good, but at the same time you are constantly looking at yourself from an outside lens, or trying to, and sometimes those lenses aren't totally clear. So the anxiety is not about your actual behavior, it's about the imagined perception. Now, what I find interesting about this is that women experience this form of social anxiety on much higher rates, because direct communication is often judged very differently based on your gender. A Harvard Kennedy School and Stanford School set of studies found that women who speak more directly or assertively are often rated as less likable, even while their competence is rated higher. So, if judged on exactly the same plane, this is like one of my favorite studies. I've used it in a couple of workshops now as well, but judged on the same aptitude, right? The same competence level, if there is a man doing the same things versus a woman doing the same things, the woman is judged more harshly and rated less likable, even though she's doing the exact same thing, talking the same way with the same list of skills or criteria. Then there was a Stanford communication study that observed that women use more hedges and softeners in group settings. Hedges and softeners are the likes and the ums and the things that make us sound more unsure. Well, I really think that, right, this type of softening language, those are called hedges. And it's not because they want to use them. It's because we are often expected to use those things so that we avoid a negative interpretation. And then lastly, the research on the negotiation double bind shows women who advocate for themselves can face a likability penalty. Yes, that is actually what it is called, a likability penalty. And this is documented in the study. It's called Punishing Female Negotiators for Asserting Too Much or Not Enough. And these patterns create an internal prediction system, right? You start anticipating how you might be judged, and then that anticipation becomes an anxiety all on its own. And so, of course, I think to myself, what is this pressure? What is this pressure that I am putting on myself doing to me internally? When you spend your energy trying not to be misread, you become way less present and way less authentic. And that is one reason why when I meet people and they come across as, I don't know, kind of off, the first impression, as much as I wish that it wasn't the case, the first impression is so important. And it is very hard to unwind that first impression. But because of my own experience of having someone tell me after a entire semester of working with her that I come across as cold, now when I meet people that are awkward or weird or struggle to smile or can't keep the conversation going, right? My first instinct is to kind of go, oh God, it's kind of, she's kind of a bitch. But I have to remind myself, she might just be very shy. She might be very nervous about how she's going to be perceived. And so therefore it is inflaming that exact thing. You end up over explaining yourself, or you apologize unnecessarily, or you don't say anything at all, which can sometimes be worse. You monitor every micro cue, and then often those people, including myself, are assuming the worst version of how you came across. So this happens constantly still to me. I check in with my husband like, was I annoying, or was I too much, or did I talk too much, or do you think they liked me? Like I'm a 35-year-old woman and I am still looking at my husband going, do you think I did good? Give me a good star. It's just it is a silly funny thing that is still part of my reality. But neuro research shows that anticipating social reaction activates the exact same threat response area as physical danger. So, if you, like me, are going into a social interaction where you're a little uncomfortable, you might feel the same nerves, the same adrenaline, the same stage fright almost, because again, stage fright, similar, same kind of fear as danger. You could shake, you can get an upset stomach, you can start to stutter or not breathe. It's all part of it. And this was demonstrated in studies comparing individuals with social anxiety disorder to controls, but the same brain region activated in non clinical populations when they expect negative evaluation. So your body responds and reacts as if you were actually in danger, even if the situation is simply a regular old normal interaction. Something that I found myself doing before I walked into this wedding is I started talking about the fact that I was going to a wedding where I didn't think I would know anybody except for the bride and groom, right? And I talked about it with friends, I had brought it up with family, and I think there is a version of me in the past who really would have spun before I came to something like this. But in speaking with a few of my friends, I realized that I actually feel a lot less pressure when I am interacting with people who I don't know versus people who I am lightly acquainted with. There's something about the fear of seeing people who I think already have a perception of me where I just know, well, I can't undo that. There's nothing for me to change about that. Whereas people that I don't know, there's no skin in the game, right? There's nothing to go off of. And so I started talking about how, wow, I said to one of my girlfriends, I mean, I'm going to go to this wedding and I get to be whoever I want to be. And we started a group chat and I get to be this funny version of myself. I told her I was even going to start trying to use some of my new material. I said I could try out some of my new material, and she was cracking up because it's such a funny reframe to think to yourself, well, okay, in one way I don't know anyone, so there's pressure to be liked. But on the other hand, I don't know anyone. So there's no pressure, right? And there was something about reframing and prepping myself, knowing that I get to show up as whoever I want to be, as the most outgoing, fun, biggest version of myself, because I don't have any, there's no investment here. And I'll tell you what, that is exactly what I did. We showed up to the wedding and we started introducing ourselves immediately, because if you don't know anyone, there's really no harm in turning around and just saying, "Hey, we don't know anyone. How do you know the bride and groom?" And it's fun to get that combo started. And I will tell you, I I ended up making like a group of friends who we exchanged numbers. We followed everyone on social media, and we ended up having an absolute ball because I just decided, well, there's no pressure here. If I don't know anyone, if I don't like anyone, or if no one likes me, there's not going to be any repercussions because I don't know any of these people. You know what I mean? And it just so happens that because of that weight lifted of needing those people to like me, I walked away having these awesome interactions, and it's still an external validator, but talking with the groom afterwards, he had said that they had a couple of other couples who said, "Wow, like that couple is so cool." And I said to my husband, "Yes, like we killed it. We smashed it out of the park." But again, there wasn't as much trying because there wasn't the same skin in the game. And it ended up being such a fun weekend, just kind of getting to go all out and deciding that if someone viewed me as annoying or as too much or as bitchy or as cold, I know that I'm not a cold person. I know that I'm a connector, that I want to envelop people the way that I want to be enveloped in their love, right? And if that isn't received, there's nothing else that I can do except to keep doing what I'm doing. So I don't know. I I'm so pleased, and I feel like I every time I have interactions like that, it reinforces this idea that I get to be who I am and that I get to do that and not be so afraid that someone's going to misjudge me or perceive me in a way that I am terrified of. Even though that situation with my teacher will stay burned in my memory for all of time, all of these little interactions do what they can to untangle that knot just a little bit further. The truth here, and I know you know this if you're here listening to this, people are not thinking about us as much as we think they are. We often feel like others are watching and evaluating or forming opinions, but most of the time they aren't. And I've talked about this in other episodes as well. This is the spotlight effect at work. It is a cognitive bias where people overestimate how much others notice or evaluate them. And in the classic t-shirt study, yes, there was a study that is legit named the t-shirt study. Participants were asked to wear like a really embarrassing t-shirt, and most of them believed that about half the room would notice their embarrassing t-shirt. But in reality, only about a quarter of the room did. And this has been replicated in several different variations. So this means that our fear of being misread is often a projection, not an actual perception. Now, I want to talk about breaking this pattern. So, these are some tools that help me, and they are going to help you moving out of uh, what are we going to call it? Interpretation management. Okay. And into more clarity. First and foremost, as a speaking coach, is something I talk with my clients about when they're speaking as well. But my approach as a coach is not to make people sound robotic. I want people to be able to approach the world authentically and really present and with integrity. I don't want them to feel like they are stunted by the rules of what perfect speech or perfect communication is. So, these are a few of these tools that I'm hoping you can take into your daily life as well. First things first, neutral delivery, right? Speak plainly, say what you mean with simple sentences. This is something, you know, this person whenever they get into a social situation, especially like I have someone in my life who every time we are in a group, a bigger group, not just me and their partner and my husband, they start using bigger words, they start over explaining, they start, just there's an air about them that becomes like a little like name droppy and know it all, and there's something so off putting about that. But I have to imagine this is their own social anxiety at work. So say what you mean with simple sentences. You do not need to overdo it here. Number two is the one clean sentence rule. So if you are trying to explain something or explain your thought, try to deliver that point once, and do not pad it to soften the impact. Now, I will say this with a grain of salt. If you are someone who knows that you're speaking on a very polarizing topic and you care about being liked, this might not be something to totally go like fully balls deep and not soften your impact. But again, this is kind of where that clean, neutral delivery will really come into play. Next is pause before you over explain. So ask yourself, truly in your own mind, ask yourself if you are adding clarity or if you are managing interpretation. And lastly, assume neutral interpretation unless you have actual evidence otherwise. Okay. This is very specific. Unless you have true evidence that something that you said hurt someone's feelings, made someone uncomfortable, that made them not like you, whatever, unless you have actual evidence, most likely from them, you need to assume neutral interpretation. People are usually thinking about themselves, not about whether or not you sounded too direct or too much or talked too much, didn't ask the right things, right? Like most people are thinking about how they are acting in a situation, not about how you are. So, same thing that we say with assume positive intent, assume neutral interpretation for yourself. So here is where we get to this reframing the fear of being seen as a bitch. And this is a lot of how this podcast even came to be. People who fear being perceived as harsh tend to score higher in traits related to empathy and warmth in interpersonal research, which means that the fear is not a sign that you're too much. It's a sign that you care incredibly deeply about how your presence affects others. So, my question is, what if the fear is not really about being seen as a bitch? Okay. What if the real fear is about losing approval? And what if approval was never supposed to be the source of your confidence? I know. What if approval is not supposed to be the source of your confidence? And that's kind of where this reframe for this wedding weekend came in for me, where I just said, well, none of these people have a say in my life, or they don't change my friendships, or the fact that me and the couple who's getting married love us, and that we have our own you know what I mean? It doesn't, none of this affects my life. So why not just be completely and fully who I am and act how I want to act and love on others and be super kind and inclusive and really like embody this highest version of myself, which is also to have a really great time, to tear up the dance floor, to wear the awesome dress and to do my makeup and to take incredible photos of everyone else and make other people feel good. Like this is all the stuff that I love doing. And if someone looks at me and then says, I don't think I like that, their approval should not be the source of my confidence. I have to put that on a button to remember that every day. So, my wrap up message here is you do not need to micromanage every perception. You don't need to compress yourself into a smaller version or a softer version just to avoid misinterpretation. You can be clear without being cruel, and you can be direct without being misunderstood. The grounded version of you is powerful and it is enough. Social anxiety, it loses its power the moment your goal shifts from being perceived the right way into being yourself the real way. And all I'm saying is if you're showing up as yourself in the real way, the right people are going to be attracted and magnetized to you. And that is why I have 5 new friends this weekend, guys. Anyways, that is all you have from me today. I will be back next week, back in rainy Seattle. And if there's something in this episode that resonated with you or that really sits that you want to jot down, or maybe you want to send me a DM, because listen, I'm not saying that my confidence is based on your approval, but if you did like it, I always love to hear what stuff is sticking. So I would love your note. Other than that, please, please, please tune in next week. We only have a few more weeks of the year. And that is all I have for you. Thank you so much, wherever and whenever you are listening. And I will talk to you next week. Bye.